Well, hello, class. I hope you can hear me. I want you to know that it is hard to give these lectures with no one in front of me, sitting at my desk, like looking at my computer screen. I don't lecture with notes in the classroom. I don't lecture with notes in my office, but it's just a far less dynamic experience, and I find myself umming and So I apologize for that. I'll try to kind of keep on point, and I'll try to be to the point a little bit, more effectively than I have been in the past on these lectures. Well, in fact, you don't know it, but I just recorded one of these, and I just threw it out. I just threw it in the bin. I used a different technology, and I was messing with the technology, and I was umming and ahhing. So I will try not to do that. Won't try to mess with the technology. Just want to give you a couple ideas to think about, because you have this discussion this week essentially asking you to weigh in on the question, why do Europeans expand outward and embark on these great voyages of exploration and discovery and conquest and colonization ultimately, and why doesn't that happen with Europe, with Native Americans going the other direction? Why doesn't that happen? So let me first deal with the question of why European exploration and just give you some bullet points. Your book, I think, fleshes out the story a little bit more. You can certainly do independent research on any or a number of these points, but I'm just going to give you a whole big menu of reasons, not necessarily in hierarchical order. So one thing we should note is that the European population is rebounding from the bubonic plague. This means that there is an increasing growth of consumer demand. You have the rise of a merchant class to meet this growing demand for goods, and you have the expansion of commerce coming out of the sort of, as they call them, the Dark Ages in the 1400s and such. You have a merchant class, although they don't have social or political power, beginning to gain economic power, beginning to promote voyages, especially to the east, especially to places like China, of course, to get those precious silks and spices and porcelains and so forth. You also at this time have a transition that Europe is making from a very decentralized political landscape where you have little principalities and fiefdoms and local lords and nobles and even small kind of monarchs controlling little pieces of territory, little pieces of turf throughout Europe, to the creation of these new modern kinds of nation states where you have an absolutist monarch, you have the King of France, Louis XIV, you have England, Spain, all consolidating together as large, powerful entities that can begin to support voyages of enterprise and voyages of exploration to the New World. That, for instance, is the example with Spain, where Francis and Ferdinand and Isabella unite the thrones of Castile and Aragon, creating a new powerful Spanish nation state for the first time, and you have these resources then that are pushing nation states to enrich their own coffers, and also at the expense of other competitive states throughout Europe. You have competition throughout Europe for goods, and mercantilism is a system whereby these monarchs and merchants sort of converge and align themselves, and monarchs underwrite either the voyages of explorers like Columbus or merchants like in England. You have all these different trading companies like the London Company, the Virginia Company, the East Asia Company, the Royal African Company, and all these become underwritten by sometimes investment, as the case in Europe, which is the most sort of capitalist-minded of these new nation states, but otherwise by public money, by monarchs who say, go out and explore the world, but when you find something, you claim it for Spain, you claim it for France, and the proceeds from those activities are going to come back and enrich the coffers of France and Spain. That system is known as mercantilism. It's a system whereby monarchies control this new emergent global trading system. and they regulated it, and hopefully they funneled, if they had it their way, they funneled the goods back to themselves and ultimately enriched their nations at the expense of others. Fundamentally, this meant obtaining more gold and silver than other states. New technologies allow for all this to happen. They allow for boats to ply the seven seas, to go longer distances. Prince Henry, the navigator of Portugal, there at his school in Lisbon, is developing all kinds of new technologies. And you have, during this period, the creation of new kinds of boats, the Portuguese caravel, the Spanish galleon, new kinds of sails, the Latin sail, new instruments to navigate, like the compass and the astrolabe and the sextant, new knowledge of the trade winds and of nutrition, so that you could prevent scurvy and keep your men from dying on long voyages. So you have all this coming together as well. So there's all kinds of stuff that's coming together at this time, as well as things like, you can throw in, for good measure, things like the sort of values of individualism emerging out of the Renaissance. No surprise, in places like Florence and Venice, you have very vibrant capitalist economies that are emerging in the places we also associate as places of artistic creation in the Renaissance. But it's no surprise that you have capitalism emerging along with the Renaissance, because the Renaissance places a value upon individuals and individual achievement and human potential and things like that. And as individuals begin to push outward, and merchants, for instance, pursuing their own aims, pursuing their own ambitions, often at the expense of others, you have the old aristocrats and the peasants looking for new land, new opportunities, lower nobility in places like Spain who don't have much land, peasants, of course, who can't own land throughout Europe. You have religious reasons, the kind of Christian missionary impulse set off even more so by the Protestant Reformation in 1517, as Catholics and Protestants race out to convert heathens worldwide. So there's all kinds of reasons here for Europeans to begin to look outward. Here's a great quote from Bernal Diaz del Castillo, who is accompanying Cortez. There should be an accent mark there, sorry, to Mexico, 1519 and such. And he says, we came here to serve God and the king, and also to get rich, kind of aligning all of these motivations in one pithy statement there. Now we go to the question, though, why not Native Americans? I mean, why didn't Native societies conquer Europe instead of the other way around? And I think it's clear that Native peoples, had the sophistication. They had huge societies. If you look at places like the Mayan Aztec societies that existed in Mesoamerica at the time the Spaniards arrived, these are large populous societies. They're state-based societies. They have a tremendous amount of resources. They have sophisticated cultural systems. They have architecture, huge monuments that they have built that rival those of the pyramids in Egypt. This is all in Mesoamerica, in the central valley of Mexico, near Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan. If you go to North America, where we assume, these people were living in small village-based societies, I mean, if you look back as early as 1100 A.D., you've got societies like Pueblo Bonito emerging in the American Southwest. Here's some great pictures of Mesa Verde, the ancient Anasazi people building cliff-top cities there. These are cities of, pictures that my friend took here just this last year of, this is Pueblo Bonito again in Chaco Canyon near the present-day Four Corners area, where you've got Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado all coming together, and these are amazing societies that emerged 1100 AD, hundreds of years before Europeans arrived. You've got these incredible societies building these monumental architecture. This is one of these kivas, subterranean areas beneath these large monumental buildings, and the petroglyphs, sorry. But anyway, these kind of amazing developments that are taking place throughout the Americas both in the west as well as the east. This is an artist's depiction of Cahokia, which emerges at its zenith around, again, 1100. You got about 30,000 people there. You have huge monuments that you can still see today at Cahokia Mound State Park outside of St. Louis. And so these are big, sophisticated, important societies. Why aren't they compelled to go across the other direction? And so, with that in mind, I'll just kind of outline a few of the comparisons and contrasts, which I think help us at least to answer the question as to why Europeans and why not Native Americans. Politically speaking, going back to things I just said, Europeans at this period during the 1400s and 1500s, they're developing big nation states during this period, and those nation states then can support these voyages of exploration and discovery. On the other hand, if you look at Native American societies at the same time, they're actually the opposite thing is occurring. That you've got bigger state-based societies, like I just showed you Cahokia along the in the American Southwest along the Mississippi River, Southeast. I showed you Chaco Canyon in the Southwest. Those kind of places actually are gone. They've become ruins even before Columbus has arrived. So what's going on there? Well, that's a larger story, more complicated story, and I'm not going to go into that. I teach a Native American class if you're interested, and there are books. There is Google. But Native American societies, for various reasons, are, especially in North America, are coming into decline. You have localism prevailing. So these small-scale, decentralized societies have a harder time when confronted with these large-scale, centralized monarchies with all of their power and resources. In terms of technology, you have similar kinds of things. You have Europeans, not because they're any more innovative. I mean, if you look back just before this period of time, Europeans lagged many parts of the earth in terms of their technological innovations, and Europeans mostly borrowing from Muslim engineers, scientists, astronomers, the Chinese, and everything. And yet Europe, starting at about this period, begins to apply technology in ways that makes European states very, very powerful. Obviously, iron, guns. There's a great book called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond, where he explains, why this happens. And it's not cultural superiority on the part of Europeans. A lot of it's based upon environment. The fact, for instance, that all the domesticated animals come from this sort of, Fertile Crescent and emanating outward from there, all the major domesticated animals which begin to make agriculture very, very productive, which begin to grow surplus, which begin to allow specialization and more artisanal production of new kinds of technology. These things are happening in the Eurasian corridor and spreading into Europe. So you have the development of guns, artillery, seafaring technology, of course, we talked about that, and domesticated animals, which not only increase the efficiency of agriculture, but they also become carriers of disease as well. And of course, we know that one thing that's going to happen is Europeans are going to bring these very powerful disease vectors, these very powerful microbes and pathogens over to North America, and Native Americans, not having natural immunities to these, are going to have a really hard time with it and are going to see population loss from 70 to even 90% in some places. Native Americans haven't developed these things. They have a wheel, it's a children's toy. They have metal, but it's used for ornamentation, not for weapons of destruction. And I shouldn't say no, but should say few animals suitable for domestication. There is an alpaca down in, there's llama, alpaca down in South America, Peru. There are turkeys in North America. There are dogs and things like that. But, try to hitch a bison to a plow, and good luck with that. There aren't any beasts of burden suitable for domestication. That doesn't mean Native Americans don't produce still effective agriculture. They do, but you do have a kind of snowball effect of technological production and agricultural surplus that's happening in Europe, that's not happening throughout all of the Americas, and it's leading to the Europeans arriving with far more advanced technologies than the Europeans, and of course, than the Native Americans. And of course, the lack of seafaring technology helps to answer in a nutshell why Europeans are coming to the Americas and why Native Americans who lack the seafaring technology are not going in the opposite direction. They also don't have the will and the desire and the motivation and the individualism to do so as well. So let's look at some of that. In terms of belief systems, I think that it's important to recognize that the Judeo-Christian tradition sort of places man at the apex of the world in terms of their control over natural systems. That in Genesis, God admonishes mankind, be fruitful and multiply, abound on the earth and subdue it. This is the charge that Europeans take to the rest of the world. Abound on the earth, subdue it, plow it, plant it, build it. Whereas in the Native American tradition, you have a kind of world filled with all kinds of supernatural forces. In terms of hierarchy, there is none. If anything, man is sort of lesser powerful than are the animistic spirits that are inhabited by ancestors, powerful ancestors who dress up in the clothing of animals and things like that. That's a whole different relationship between nature, and I think this approach here leads to a far more mechanistic approach or instrumentalist approach to using nature in service of technological growth, innovation, progress, and so forth. Whatever you may think of that, I think that's the outcome. Also, in terms of religion, Christianity carries with it this missionary impulse. Christians want to go and spread their religion, and that's not happening. I hope this microphone is kind of working, because I don't see that it's working very well. I don't know. There's a missionary impulse there. They want to spread their religion, going back to the Apostle Paul and spreading his religion throughout throughout Turkey and the Middle East and such. Native American has no similar tradition. Okay, so there's no desire to, hey, we worship the buffalo or the coyote or whatever. Hey, let's go over across the hill and convert those people to our religious idea. There is nothing like that in the Native American tradition. Christianity and capitalism also reflect this individualistic spirit that's growing in Europe. And that, in Christianity, of course, it's all about the individual salvation, and the individual gets to choose. Are they going to, be redeemed, or are they going to be damned? And capitalism, of course, is the same way. The individual chooses to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So there's this strong impulse of individualism that pushes people outward in the world and makes them a motive force for good or for bad. In Native American religion and economics, you have no similar ideas. Religion is collectivist. There's not. I'm gonna make it to heaven. Who cares about you guys? I mean, you can't do that. There's an afterworld. Everyone goes. The village cheat as well as the most virtuous people. In terms of economics, a similar kind of idea of collectivism, collective ownership versus private property. And that's the last point I want to come to. I think is very important in terms of compelling Native Americans to the New World, in terms of differentiating these kind of emergent modern societies of Europe with these traditional societies of Native America, that property rights is an important part of the European toolkit and driving them to go to the New World, to get land. And Europeans, believe that, hey, you can use law to buy and sell and trade land. They believe that if you weren't using the land, and of course they looked at Native Americans and they didn't really see all the use that Native Americans were really doing on the land, like burning it and using it effectively for their own economic systems of hunting and gathering. They said, hey, these people aren't growing. They were actually growing. It didn't look like European agriculture, but they were certainly engaged in agriculture. But Europeans looked at it and said, oh, this is just nature. These people are just running around in nature. Well, legally, our law tells us if you're not improving nature, then it can be taken from you, and we can take it, and those people who are going to improve it should have it. This, of course, comes down into Euro-American property law in things like the Homestead Act later on, which say you can have free land as long as you improve it, it can be yours. And then going back to that religious idea about abound the earth, multiply and subdue it, there were religious as well as legal reasons that Europeans felt that they could seize the land from Native Americans. And of course, Native Americans don't have a similar kind of idea about property rights. I hope this has given you some thoughts about the differences between Native Americans and European societies, and why one group is finds themselves on one trajectory towards, almost a global, world domination at this time, colonization, conquest, spreading diseases, things like that. Oh, I should have put diseases in here as well, but I've mentioned it a couple times. I hope this just gives you some ideas. I haven't answered it. We could write books and volumes about it. Good luck with the discussion, and we'll talk to you later.